This is the Hermetic Hour, and I'm your host, Poke Runyon. It's May 27th, 2010, and tonight the subject that we will discuss, fascinating subject we'll discuss, is the Masonic Conspiracy. And we'll deal with this fascinating subject of conspiracy connections, if there are any, and we will discuss the actual and fanciful history of Freemasonry in relation to occultism, radical politics, the New World Order, and we'll go from the Illuminati through the French Revolution. We'll discuss the Morgan Affair and the Palladian hoax. We'll get into Fabian socialism a little bit and talk about Marxism. And we'll reveal to you just what the great secret of Freemasonry really is, and why the Masons are hated and feared by the fanatics and true believers of the world's great religions, and the followers of the world's most radical political philosophies. Now, we'll briefly review Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol. Now, we'll take calls at the last 15 minutes of the, because we have a lot of material to cover before we take calls. So we'll take calls at the last 15 minutes. And this is a highly charged subject, so please make your questions brief and reasonable. So, at the sound of the gavel in the east, knock, knock, we will begin by discussing the actual as opposed to the fanciful history of Freemasonry. Now, Freemasonry supposedly began with the building of Solomon's Temple and came down to us through the Knights Templar, according to the legend, and it came in through the stonemasons, and there's the secret cannon they used to build the cathedrals, and then finally it emerged as a philosophical society in early 1700s in England. Now, the truth of the matter is that we can't prove the Knight Templar connection. Nobody's been able to prove that. It's nice to think about it, but nobody's been able to prove it. And the story of King Solomon's Temple is actually an allegory that was created around about the time Masonry was brought about in the early 1700s. That's when the master's degree, the third degree, was added to the first two degrees of the Old Stonemasons Guild. Now, what happened was that the Old Stonemasons Guild was, you might say, infiltrated by gentlemen who were not actually stonemasons, and they became what was known as speculative philosophical Masons, and they transformed very quickly on the Old Stonemasons Guild into a gentleman's club, where gentlemen and aristocrats and people who were professional people could meet and have dinner and have a few drinks and discuss the affairs of the day, with the idea that they would be totally free from any form of religious prejudice or religious discussion, and even political discussions. You were supposed to, in Masonry, you were supposed to respect the other man's religion as well as much as you respected your own, even though you certainly were not told to give up your religion or anything like this. But the reason why Masonry was founded is frankly because the British had just been through a very, very nasty civil war, which had religious connotations, and the Protestants were against the Church of England, and the Calvinists were against the Church of England, and the Catholics were caught in the middle, and they were all killing each other over in the name of religion. And so the British wanted to get away from this. They wanted to be able to have the Puritans and the Church of England people and the Catholics and all sit down together and get over this religious problem. So this is one of the reasons why Masonry was founded. And the other reason, of course, is that England was coming into democracy at this time. And the philosophy that Masonry really espoused was a Republican kind of philosophy. And the main philosopher behind Masonry, but the model for Masonry, I think, in my opinion, was John Locke. John Locke was a British philosopher who died just before Masonry was founded, but his philosophy was the philosophy of the Republic, and what became in England the constitutional monarchy. And John Locke, his philosophy was not radical. It was very well balanced, and he believed he believed that people should own property, providing it, the property that they owned didn't conflict with the will of the people. In other words, he didn't believe that property should be owned at the expense of the people, but he did believe in property rights, and he believed in representation. He believed in check and balances in government. In other words, essentially, John Locke believed in the kind of government that developed in England and that we developed in the United States, and that was the philosophy that Masons espoused. It was freedom and dignity and equality, but all very well regulated and in a well regulated society. Now, so Masonry, the main reason for the foundation of it was to have a place where men of these different religions and these different political views could get together without hating each other and without arguing with each other, and have brotherhood and be able to just generally bring an air of peace and prosperity to their work. And so this was started in England, and it, of course, had to be sanctioned by the Crown and by the Church of England. And so it reverenced religion, and Masonry was very biblical. Now, what they did when they created the third degree, which actually made Masonry what it is today, 300 years ago, they created this third degree, this Master Mason's degree. Now, what the Master Mason's degree does is it makes an allegory out of the building of King Solomon's temple. Now, the idea here is that King Solomon wants to build the temple. David told him to build it, so he's charged to build the temple and to build it to God. So he goes to Hiram of Tyre, who is a Phoenician, Canaanite, a pagan, and he says, "I want to build a temple to the Lord, and will you help me?" And the Phoenician, Hiram of Tyre, says, "Yes." He says, "We worship the Lord too in our own way, and yes, we'll help you." So then Solomon, who had no idea of how to build a temple, and Hiram had the raw materials to build it, but Hiram of Tyre also had a master architect who was also named Hiram Abiff. So King Hiram of Tyre brought Hiram Abiff into the temple project with King Solomon. So Hiram Abiff, now this is important to remember. Hiram Abiff was the son of a Phoenician father, and his mother was a Jewish woman. So Hiram Abiff represented the common man of both Judea, Israel, and Phoenicia. He represented the common man of both countries, both the Jewish country and the pagan country. Now, he was one of the Grand Masters. King Solomon was one of the Grand Masters, and King Hiram was. They had 3 Grand Masters. Now, all these three Grand Masters knew, and this is here again very important to the allegory, They knew the secret word of a master Mason. They knew this secret word. All three of them did. However, three men from Tyre became very jealous. Three of the workmen became very jealous, and they conspired to harass Hiram a bit to give him the word. They wanted to threaten him to give him the word so they could have the word of a master Mason, and he refused, and they killed him. They murdered him in the temple, and they never got the word. Well, and they went out and buried him. King Hiram and King Solomon dug him up, raised him out of the grave. It didn't bring him back to life, but they raised him out of the grave to rebury him elsewhere. And Solomon declared that the word's lost. Now Hiram's dead, and the lost word is lost. So we'll have to have a substitute word because the word's lost. Now you have to realize that this is an allegory, and there's no possible way that this word could be lost in reality because Hiram of Tyre knew it, and King Solomon knew it, and because Hiram of Aviv is dead, that doesn't mean the word's going to be lost. So what they really meant by this was that this word, that the two kings and the man who represented the common people, they all had this word, and what the word really meant was God. And it was a word that meant God in all three. It meant to the common people and to the king of Judea and to King Hiram of Phoenicia. It all meant the same thing. It meant God. But because Hiram, the common man, had been murdered, it meant that the common people were not really ready to understand that the same God was God for everybody. And this was the whole mystery of the lost word. And this is why the allegory was created. So what it means is that Masons will work to find the lost word, and eventually we will find the lost word. What this means is that eventually, if we keep working toward the light, then eventually everyone in the world will respect everybody else's religion because they'll realize that everybody else's religion is the best religion for them, and that they will find God their own way, and they have as much respect for that guy's religion as you have for your own. That's the ultimate goal. In other words, and oh boy, do we ever need that today? Because look what's going on in the Middle East and in Afghanistan and Iraq and do we ever need this concept? We really need it. So Masonry has a very, very worthwhile purpose and a very worthwhile secret that it has. Now,